Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are opening up a file that feels a little bit like, well, it feels like peeking into someone's personal diary.
Yeah,
But stick with me here. It actually reads more like a technical manual for maintaining a human being.
it really does. Um, it's a fascinating blend of the deeply personal and the, rigidly systematic. It's rare to see someone treat their own life with the exact same rigor they treat, like a server farm.
Exactly. So we are looking at a specific blog entry from a site called kianmeng.org. The title is This Week in Review 2026, Week '08, and it was published on February 22nd, 2026.
Huh.
Now, the author, Ang, refers to himself as an old software plumber. And I feel like that title is doing a lot of heavy lifting in how we should interpret this whole text.
Yeah, it really is. Because, a software plumber isn't the guy designing the flashy new AI interface, right?
Yeah.
He's the one deep in the back end, fixing the pipes, routing the data, making sure the entire infrastructure doesn't just collapse.
Right.
And what we're going to see today is how he applies that exact plumber mindset to his own biology and his psychology.
So we're treating this deep dive as a case study.
Hmm.
We're looking at how a technical, highly analytical mind debugs and refactors a human life. It's essentially the concept of the quantified self, would you say?
It is, but I want to make a really clear distinction here.
Yeah.
Usually when we talk about the quantified self, we picture, some biohacker in Silicon Valley spending millions of dollars on blood swaps and cryo chambers.
Yeah, totally. The extreme stuff.
Right. But this isn't that. This is the quantified self for the regular person. It's about the intersection of rigorous data tracking. So health metrics, coding contributions, even gardening, and this underlying layer of Stoic philosophy.
It's rigorous but accessible. So the mission for us today is to unpack the key pillars of Ang's week. We're going to look at the physiological feedback loops he tracks, specifically how sleep just crashes his whole system. We're going to look at a major shift he's making in his meditation practice, moving from a task to a process. And of course, we have to talk about the tinkering.
The joy of maintaining everything from Python scripts to literal fish tanks, it is all connected for him.
Okay, so let's unpack this. I want to start with the bugs because, let's be honest, if this was a perfect week where Ang won the lottery marathon, we wouldn't actually learn anything. And this wasn't a perfect week, was it?
No, not at all. And that's what makes the data so incredibly valuable. If you look at the health and wellness section of his log, the metrics tell a story of a system under stress. It's basically a series of warning lights flashing on his dashboard.
Right, so let's look at the hard numbers. He tracks his sleep meticulously. And for this specific week, week '08 of 2026, he averaged 6.6 hours of sleep a day. That's down from the previous week. Now, I have to play devil's advocate here. 6.6 hours. I know plenty of people who would absolutely kill for that. Is that really a bug?
Well, context is everything, right? For Ang, that is a deviation from his baseline. And more importantly, look at the correlation he draws. Correspondingly, his weight went up. He clocked in at an average of 69.16 kilograms.
Which is, what, about 152 pounds?
Yeah, right around there. And again, to the untrained eye, 69 kilos is a perfectly healthy weight. But Ang analyzes it like an error log. He's not looking at the raw number. He's looking at the variance.
Right, the change. And he identifies a few culprits immediately. First, the context. It's the tail end of the festive season, which, given the details about Chinese New Year later in the text, implies a lot of routine disruption.
Disruption is definitely the key word. He mentions heavy rains keeping him indoors, the holidays breaking his usual routine, and a specific course of medication he's taking. But what's really fascinating is how he connects the lack of sleep directly to the weight gain. It's not just, oh, I ate too much. He describes this whole cortisol loop.
I love this part. It felt like a real aha moment. He's describing a memory leak in a server, but it's his physical body. Walk us through that loop. How does missing an hour's sleep actually result in physical weight gain?
So he notes that on days he got less sleep down around 5 hours. His cortisol levels, which is the stress hormone, spiked. And this is a very well-documented physiological response. When you're sleep deprived, your body perceives it as a threat. It literally thinks you are in danger.
Right, the primitive brain just goes, why are we awake? Is a tiger hunting us?
Exactly. And because the body thinks it's in a survival situation, that high cortisol triggers two specific defensive mechanisms. First, water retention. The body hoards fluids. Second, it triggers cravings, and specifically for high-calorie, quick-energy junk food.
So the weight gain isn't just fat instantly appearing out of nowhere. It's the body holding on to water and screaming for sugar.
Precisely. And this is where the loop gets really vicious. The cravings lead to poor food choices, which then leads to late dinners. And Aang notes that late dinners signal the body to store fat rather than burn it because your circadian rhythm thinks it's time to power down, not digest a massive meal. It's a systemic chain reaction.
Wow.
Yeah, one variable, the sleep crashes the diet program and the weight program.
It's the domino effect. And I think that's the real learner insight for you listening right now. We so often treat these things in complete isolation, like I need to sleep better or I need to eat better, but Aang treats them as dependent variables in a complex system. You literally can't patch the weight bug without fixing the sleep bug first.
He does. And because he views it as a system, he applies a patch. He doesn't just say, I'll try harder next week. He implements a strict protocol. Did you catch the double shower strategy?
Oh, he did. This is the kind of specific, slightly quirky life hack I just love. He recommends showering twice a day, specifically right after waking up. Is this just about hygiene, or is there a real hack here?
It seems simple, but look at his reasoning. He says it's to keep the mind fresh and, crucially, to cool the overall body temperature down. He's manually regulating his physiological state to improve his alertness. In tropical climates, or honestly even just heated homes in the winter, lethargy often tracks with body heat. He's using cold water to basically cold boot his nervous system.
It's thermal regulation as a productivity tool. That is brilliant. And he couples this with a very specific dietary structure. He calls it 16852 intermittent fasting.
Yeah, that likely refers to the standard 16.8 schedule, so fasting for 16 hours, eating for 8. The 52 might be his own shorthand for the weekly frequency or a specific variation, but the core is time-restricted feeding. And his food inputs are incredibly specific. Oatmeal, soft-boiled eggs, miso noodle soup with vegetables.
It sounds delicious, honestly.
Yeah.
But notice the precision there. He's not just eating, he's tracking the exact input. He even mentions 2 deep-sea fish meals specifically. Why those foods?
He's trying to get the system back to baseline. He acknowledges that the festive season introduced a lot of high-carb, salty, quote-unquote, outside food. So miso is great for the gut biome. Eggs and fish are high-quality protein. He's actively removing the inflammatory variables.
Right.
He's not beating himself up about the bad week, which is huge.
Yeah.
He's just saying, okay, the system is buggy. Let's rerun the initialization script. Oatmeal and cold showers.
Speaking of rerunning scripts, let's talk about movement. Because the rain really messed with his step count this week.
It did. He averaged about 6,000 steps. Now, 6,000 isn't terrible by any means, but it was a struggle for him because he couldn't do his usual strolls.
And I love that he doesn't seem to go to a traditional gym. His gym is the world. He talks about diversified routines.
This is such a great takeaway for anyone who just hates the treadmill. Aang gets his steps in through grocery runs, field trips to plant nurseries, visiting fish stores. He's integrating movement naturally into his hobbies and chores. It's functional fitness.
But even there, he finds a bug. He specifically flags a physical error, squatting too much while weeding.
It's a literal pain point, but it shows he's paying deep attention to his biomechanics. He notes that he needs to be careful not to overexert while doing the gardening. It's that constant monitoring, what is my body telling me? Is this good pain or bad pain? It reinforces that old software plumber persona. The hardware is aging, and he has to respect the wear and tear.
Okay, so we have the body, the hardware being monitored and debugged. Now let's move to the software, the operating system, his mind.
This was honestly the most profound part of the log for me. His approach to meditation.
He's doing these short sessions, right? 1 to 2 minutes, which sounds almost too short to even count. I feel like most apps tell you that you need at least 20 minutes to achieve any kind of enlightenment.
You might think so, but listen to his reasoning here. He suggests pushing the limit just slightly. If you're comfortable with 1 minute, push it to 2. The goal isn't just relaxation.
No, and this is where it gets really interesting. He says the goal is to stretch the silence just enough for the boredom and restlessness to surface.
That is such a critical distinction. Most people meditate to avoid stress or to avoid boredom. They want to escape. Aang is inviting it in. He says that when the boredom surfaces, that is exactly where the investigation of the mind begins.
He calls it shifting from stabilizing the mind to investigating the mind. It's like he's sitting there waiting for the error message to pop up so he can finally read it.
Precisely. If you just sit in bliss, you aren't learning anything about your default programming. You have to wait for the glitch, the I'm bored, I'm hungry, I want to check my phone, to actually understand how your brain works. That discomfort, that's the data point.
And he takes this mindfulness out into the garden, too. He makes a really cool distinction between a task-oriented and a process-oriented activity.
Yes, he uses raking leaves as the perfect example. A task-oriented mindset is focused entirely on the outcome. The leaves must be gone. The focus is just on finishing.
Which is exactly how I do chores.
Yeah.
Get this done so I can go watch TV. The activity is just an obstacle in my way.
Right, which is the default mode for most of us. But Ang refactors this into a process-oriented mode. He says the focus should be purely on the movement itself. He breaks it down into lifting, pushing, and placing.
Lifting, pushing, placing. It sounds like a robotic script.
It's basically Vipassana, or insight meditation, applied to yard work. By focusing on the raw mechanics of the movement, he stops doing the chore and starts being in the moment. He's actively debugging his own impatience.
So instead of rushing to the finish line, the act of raking becomes the entire point. That is a heavy concept for a Sunday afternoon in the garden.
It connects right back to that Stoic philosophy he mentions. He talks about a detachment feeling. It's not about not caring. It's about detaching from the need for the result to be immediate. It's finding peace in the loop.
Which segues perfectly into his projects, because this man is a tinkerer in the truest sense of the word. He calls himself a software plumber, and when you look at how he spends his free time, he is constantly tightening bolts and fixing leaks, both digital and physical.
It's really impressive. He mentions submitting pull requests or PRs to major open source projects. He lists Go, Python, Rust, Haskell. I mean, these are heavy hitter programming languages.
I want to pause on this for the non-coders out there. What exactly is a pull request and why is he submitting them?
Think of open source software like a massive community garden. Everyone can use it, and everyone can help maintain it. A pull request is when you write a bit of code like a fix, and you ask the project owners to pull it into the main project.
And he's submitting fixes for typos.
Mostly typos, and that is deeply significant. He's not trying to rewrite the kernel of the operating system. He's doing the janitorial work of the open source community. It's a form of digital gardening. He sees a typo in the documentation and he just fixes it.
Why bother, though? I mean, if the code works, who cares about a missing comma in the README file?
It's about the broken windows theory. If you leave typos, the code looks sloppy. If it looks sloppy, people trust it less and they treat it worse. By fixing the typos, he's maintaining the integrity of the entire ecosystem. It's a small, incremental improvement to the commons.
But he's also writing code for himself. He mentions writing Python scripts specifically to help with his own writing and his health tracking.
That's the recursive nature of the true tinkerer. He builds tools to help him build better tools. He's writing a script to track the very health data we discussed in the first segment. He is literally coding his own feedback loop. He's not waiting for some app developer to push an update. He's just building the feature he needs.
And he's learning Genome application development on top of that and revisiting networking concepts. It's just relentless curiosity. But it's not just on the screen. Let's talk about the habitat optimization.
His home and garden. This connects straight back to the task versus process mindset. He mentions a decluttering rule. 1 item per day.
1 item per day. It's so manageable. It completely destroys the excuse of, I just don't have time to clean.
It really does. And he notes a massive success in decluttering before the festive season, but he doesn't just stop there. He acknowledges there is still grout work and curtains pending.
Grout work. I feel that deep in my soul. It is the task that never, ever ends.
And the gardening, too. He describes it as decluttering gardening areas one step at a time. It feels like he treats the physical garden exactly like he treats a messy code base. He's refactoring nature.
And we have to mention the fish, the yellow-blue rack.
The fish keeping is a huge part of his ecosystem. He's breeding cichlids. He mentions priming several pairs of fishes. This isn't just a goldfish in a bowl on the counter. This is a full-on breeding program.
I love the detail about the yellow-blue rack. It implies a dedicated infrastructure, pumps, filters, tanks. It's just another system he has to monitor.
Water quality, feeding schedules, breeding pairs. And he notes that he needs to repurpose some of the items in the rack. Again, the optimization never stops. He's constantly looking for efficiencies. It's not just about having pets, it's about managing a complete biosphere.
Reading through this whole log, you get this overwhelming sense of deliberate pacing. He uses the word stoic to describe his feeling.
He does. He describes it as a stoic detachment feeling. And I think what he means is a total rejection of the hustle culture. He isn't trying to finish the garden so he can post a perfect photo on Instagram. He isn't coding to launch the next billion-dollar startup.
He's doing it for the process.
Exactly. He says his progress is slowly but surely. In a world that constantly demands instant results, lose 10 pounds in a week, learn Python in 24 hours, Aang is finding deep satisfaction in the maintenance itself, the fixing of the typo, the weeding of the bed, the changing of the fish water.
It's a deliberate life.
That's the perfect term for it.
So what does this all mean for you? For the listener who maybe isn't a software plumber or a situated breeder?
I think the power here is in the format itself, the weekly review. By actually writing this down, by logging the sleep, the weight, the code, the feelings, Aang turns a objectively bad week into pure data.
That's a key shift, because we established at the start. He had a rough week. He slept poorly, he gained weight, it rained all the time, he was on medication.
Right. If he hadn't written this review, he might just go into Monday feeling gross and guilty. He might think, I failed this week. But because he logged it, he can look at it analytically and say, oh, I didn't fail. I just had a cortisol spike due to a lack of sleep. The patch for that is to shower twice a day and eat more oatmeal.
He objectifies the failure. He separates the bug from the programmer.
Exactly. The bug is in the code, not in the person. And that allows him to fix it without all that heavy emotional baggage we usually carry around.
That is incredibly liberating. It turns life into a series of iterations rather than a pass or fail test.
And it encourages that tinkering mindset. If your life is a project, you can always submit a pull request to fix a typo. You can always optimize the code. You're never really done, and that's actually a good thing.
I'm definitely going to look at my chores differently this weekend. Lifting, pushing, placing.
Try it. See if the boredom surfaces.
Oh, I'm sure it will.
And when it does, don't run from it. Investigate it.
That brings us to the end of this deep dive into the world of our favorite software plumber.
It's been a real pleasure exploring his logs.
Now here is a provocative thought to leave you with, inspired by Aang's meditation insight. We all try to fill the silence. We scroll on our phones, we listen to deep dives like this one, we stay busy. But if you sat in silence just long enough for that uncomfortable boredom to set in, specifically that restlessness you constantly try to avoid, what bugs in your own programming might float to the surface? What is your mind really trying to tell you when you stop distracting it?
A scary but very necessary question.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you in the next deep dive.